Corrie Caulfield. Good evening. The Church of England and the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey, have been severely criticised for the way they handled an inquiry into abuse by a paedophile bishop. Shares in Metrobank, which has more than 1.5 million customers, have fallen sharply again over concerns about its ability to plug a big hole in its finances. Labour has launched its campaign for the European parliamentary elections in 2 weeks' time. Jeremy Corbyn said he wanted to reach out to everyone, not only to those who wanted either to remain in the EU or to leave it. The BBC has sacked the radio presenter Danny Baker after he tweeted a picture of a couple holding hands with a chimpanzee under the caption, "Royal Baby Leaves Hospital." Also tonight, 2 more English clubs take to the field to try to reach the final of a prestigious European football competition. A highly critical report on the way the Church of England handled child abuse cases has accused it of secrecy and of being more concerned about its own reputation than the victims. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse examined how the Church dealt with the paedophile former bishop, Peter Ball, as well as abuse allegations in the Diocese of Chichester, which covers East and West Sussex. It singled out the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey, for strong criticism, saying he showed compassion for Ball, but not for his victims, and it said the Prince of Wales had been misguided in offering his support to the former bishop. Here's our religion editor, Martin Bashir.
Described as the diocese with the most reports of child sexual abuse in the country, Chichester is said to have handled such allegations with arrogance, prevarication and tribalism. Safeguarding was poor, record-keeping almost non-existent, with the report saying that some clergy even burned files in their back gardens. But it was the investigation of Peter Ball, formerly the Bishop of Lewes and then Gloucester, that proved most incriminating. Ball had set up a monastic community for young people called Give a Year to God. It was his way of ensnaring and abusing them. And when in 1992 allegations against Ball became public, it was the then Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, who rushed not to support complainants, but instead sympathised with his predatory priest. The report says George Carey's compassion, often accorded to Ball, did not extend to his victims. Solicitor Richard Scorer represents more than 100 abuse survivors.
I think one of the most damning things that comes out of this report is that right from the beginning, as soon as these allegations against Peter Ball were coming to light, George Carey, who was the then Archbishop of Canterbury, was effectively going into bat for Peter Ball. He was advocating for Peter Ball, and there's no evidence that he was really concerned with the interests of victims or survivors, and that's an extraordinary position for the head of the Church of England to be in.
Lord Carey has declined to comment. The report also criticises the Prince of Wales, who spoke to the Archbishop of Canterbury when Ball tried to continue in ministry. The Duchy of Cornwall then purchased a property specifically for Ball to rent once he was forced from church accommodation. The report says the actions of the Prince of Wales were misguided. The Prince of Wales, in written evidence to the inquiry, said he was deceived by the former bishop. Publication of the report in London coincided with the Vatican issuing new procedures for the reporting of sexual abuse. For the first time, Roman Catholic clergy and church officials will be obliged to disclose any allegations they may have heard within 90 days, and this will apply to bishops in addition to priests. A Vatican spokesman said these new rules were being introduced to ensure that all levels of the Church would be accountable for the way in which they handled allegations of abuse.
Fresh concerns have been raised about the future of Metrobank, which was, at its launch, the UK's first new high street bank in 150 years. The company's share price has fallen sharply again as investors wait for news of a promised cash injection to prop up its balance sheet. Metrobank, which has 66 branches and more than 1.5 million customers, has now seen its value tumble by more than 85% over the past year. Our business editor, Simon Jack, reports.
Metro Bank has been trying to raise £350 million to help plug a hole that emerged in January when the bank revealed it had miscalculated how much money it needed to put aside to support a number of business loans. The news sent the bank shares down nearly 40% on that one day alone. The share price has nearly halved again since then. At its recent earnings announcement, Metro Bank further revealed that some of its larger business customers had begun withdrawing some of their money. The bank was already under close supervision by the regulator, the Prudential Regulation Authority, because of the capital miscalculation in January. A decline in confidence on the part of some customers, along with a perceived delay in raising additional capital, have made a difficult situation worse. One City investor told the BBC no one wants to give them any money. When companies need to raise new money quickly, new shares are usually offered at a steep discount to the current market price. When the share price is falling this quickly, it becomes difficult to determine what that price is. Metro Bank's current total value is just over £500 million, meaning that selling £350 million in new shares could mean current investors see well over half their stake in the bank wiped out. Sources close to the bank insisted that the new money could and would be raised shortly to strengthen an already strong financial position. Metro Bank has 1.7 million customers. Their deposits are protected up to a value of £85,000 by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme.
Jeremy Corbyn has insisted that his party's stance on Brexit isn't confusing as he launched Labour's campaign for the European elections. He said his party had a plan to unite the country and urged voters to abandon the labels of Leave and Remain. Mr Corbyn also described cross-party talks with the government to break the Brexit deadlock as difficult. Our assistant political editor Norman Smith reports.
Jeremy Corbyn today confirmed that Labour is set to enter the European elections undaunted by the criticism of its precarious balancing act over Brexit. Mr Corbyn said Labour would continue to respect the result of the referendum and would not ignore the views of the 17 million who voted for Brexit. At the same time, he sought to reassure Remainers that Labour would protect the economy and keep open the option of a further referendum. It was a stance, said Mr Corbyn, designed to bring the country together and end the division between Remainers and Leavers. But questioned afterwards, Mr Corbyn was repeatedly challenged by reporters over whether voters weren't entitled to be confused.
On the message that we're putting forward, I don't think it's confusing at all. I think it is a sensible message saying we understand what's happened, we've seen what's happened, we've seen the causes of what's happened, and we're putting forward a view that would ensure we have the opportunity of improving the social divisions within our society.
Mr Corbyn also struck a decidedly pessimistic note about the prospects for the cross-party Brexit talks, a move that would appear to scupper government hopes of bringing back Mrs May's deal for a fourth time ahead of the European elections. It was hard, said Mr Corbyn, to negotiate with a government that was disintegrating.
The talks that we're having with the government have been difficult because, as I said, the government is in some degree of disarray itself. But quite honestly, the government has to move its red lines. We cannot go on having MV1, MV2, MV3 and then coming on for possibly an MV4.
Meanwhile, in the wake of Labour's poor performance in last week's local elections, some Labour MPs today warned of an even more significant backlash against the party in the European elections because of its nuanced position on Brexit. The Labour MP and supporter of the People's Vote campaign, Mary Cray.
I think the lesson from those elections is that standing in the middle of the road means you get run over from both sides, and that the option of a confirmatory public vote on any deal is what is supported not just by our members and our voters, but also by the majority of people in this country who now know the true cost of Brexit.
However awkward Mr Corbyn's balancing act on Brexit, his supporters believe he has little option given the clear divisions among Labour MPs, members and voters. The result is a complex compromise policy and one that would seem far from an easy sell to an electorate still bitterly divided over Brexit.
There will not be a joint Remainer candidate in the Peterborough by-election. The Liberal Democrats, the Greens and Change UK have been holding discussions, but the deadline for nominations passed this afternoon. Voters will go to the polls on the 6th of June to find a replacement for the MP Fiona Onasanya. She lost her seat through a recall petition after serving time in prison for lying about a speeding offence. The broadcaster Danny Baker has been sacked by the BBC for an offensive tweet about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's new baby. The post included a photo of a chimpanzee, prompting claims the presenter was mocking the Duchess's racial heritage. Danny Baker says he deleted the tweet when he was made aware of its possible connotations and had made an idiotic mistake. The BBC said he'd shown a serious lack of judgment and could no longer work for the corporation. Our entertainment correspondent Lisa Mazimba reports.
Baker, who's presented a weekly show on BBC Radio 5 Live for the last 10 years, posted the old black and white photo on Twitter yesterday evening. It showed a well-dressed man and woman holding hands with a small chimpanzee wearing a suit. Baker added the words, "Royal baby leaves hospital." Speaking outside his home earlier today, Baker said it hadn't occurred to him that the tweet could have racist overtones.
It was up there about 8 minutes, I think, till somebody I follow said, "Dan, you know she's mixed race." Oh, it's her, of course. Took it down. That's it. You simply wouldn't do that, would you? If someone of colour had a baby, you wouldn't do that.
Scarlett Douglas, who co-presents a podcast on 5 Live about the lives of women of colour, says Danny Baker's tweet was simply unacceptable.
It was very upsetting. It was very disturbing, shocking as well.